I'm Jonathan Flug. I'm a radiologist out at the University of Colorado. Today's talk is Leadership Skills for Trainees, focusing on effective networking. John Elway has nothing to do with effective networking, but he's kind of our fearless leader in Colorado, both as a player and now as an executive, so I just felt like he would be fitting to put up there. I have no disclosures. Just real briefly, this is where I work. It's the beautiful Anschutz Medical Campus at the University of Colorado. So what I want to talk to you about today is what networking really is and why it's important for your future success. So hopefully we'll be able to dispel some of the misconceptions you may have about networking. Then we're going to talk about how to build your network, and at the end we're going to focus on how to assess and improve your network. So part one, what is networking? And we may talk, I don't think we'll get to the difference between hobnobbing and schmoozing, but we will talk about what real networking is. So I've read a lot about this, and two of the best descriptions I've heard I've come across is networking is the exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, or institutions. And in particular, any activity that increases the value of your network or the value you contribute to it. And one of the things that'll come up a lot in this discussion is what you give back to your network and how what you give really adds value and in the end is what makes you better off. No mention of shaking hands, business cards, schmoozing, etc. So why are there these misconceptions about networking? And a lot of it comes with really differentiating networking from sales. And the reason these get lumped together quite often is because sales trainers were early adopters of networking as a valuable tactic. So they use networking to meet clients and then just focus on making a sale. But at the end of the day, sales is a transactional relationship. Networking is relationship building. And if you focus on that, you'll really see them as two separate issues. This is an interesting study that I came across from the Harvard Business Review. So the title of their article was, "If Networking Makes You Feel Dirty, You're Not Alone." So they took two groups of people, and they asked half of them to think about professional networking, an event, something like that, like you see here on the left. And the other half, they said, think about social networking. So like hanging out with your 5 million closest friends at the Cubs parade. And they showed them these letters in the middle of the screen. And then they asked the different groups to fill out what words came to mind. So in the group that was told to think about professional networking, they came up with the words wash, shower, and soap. And in social networking, people came up with wish, shaker, and step. And two very different things. And when I first looked at this, when I first saw the letters and I was thinking about networking, shower and soap definitely came to my mind. And the interesting conclusion, or one of the interesting points they made in this article was that in the group that had to think about professional networking, there was a deeper feeling of moral contamination and inauthenticity, which is really pretty harsh. I mean, when you think about it. So it's all of us. Why is this important for us? Well, this is the radiologist's day, right? We're alone all day. We don't really interact naturally with a lot of people. And I know many of you have seen this on Facebook or on Kevin MD, and I know you're all thinking, this is funny, but this isn't true. But how many people saw this on Facebook with the post frighteningly accurate, right? So there is a lot of truth to this. So I want to touch on a few kind of historical networkers just to give a bit of a background on this. So Ben Franklin, among his many contributions and successes, is known as being one of the sort of historical networkers. And he formed this group called the Junto, which was a 12-member discussion forum. And there's actually iterations of that exist to this day. And he called it a club of mutual improvement. His goal was to have people from diverse occupations and backgrounds, and in order to be a part of this group, everyone had to share a spirit of inquiry. And this is sort of considered one of the earliest, social networks in our country. Another famous example of historical networkers, and this is written about in Dr. Gunderman's article in JCR on networking, and he based a lot of this off a course that given by someone named Brian Uzi, who we'll talk about a little more. But So he talks about the two different stories of Paul Revere and William Dawes. So we all know about Paul Revere, and turns out the two of them went out on their midnight rides, alerting people about the British. And we know all about Paul Revere, but actually William Dawes visited more people and covered more miles. But Paul Revere was an information broker. So he had the connections to actually do something, and he was the one who ultimately raised a militia, where William Dawes is, I guess, best known these days for his little cameo on The Simpsons as an unknown hero there. But this is a graphical representation of the contacts that Paul Revere and William Dawes made. And as you see, if you look, Paul Revere's connections are kind of all these different groups with their own connections. So as he went from person to person, it spread. Whereas William Dawes, his network that he reached out to is all closed off. So basically everyone he spoke to was going to speak to each other, regardless, and could not have the same effect. Another interesting story that's mentioned in that article is Bill Gates, who, this is an interesting picture that you can find on the internet, but one of his early connections to IBM was made through a connection that his mother had. She sat on the board of the United Way with an IBM executive, and that opened the door for his first meeting where he was able to pitch his product and become insanely rich. So this is the most popular book out there on networking. It's called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. He's sort of known as this famous networker, and if you know anyone who's gone to business school, this is a book that everybody reads, and it's very interesting. In his book, so he talks about how he got to be incredibly successful through networking. There's an article that I came across in the early 2000s boasting how he needs to have 2 Palm Pilots to keep all of his contacts. Anyways, he talks about the American culture where, John Wayne, we all like to be the cowboy, do everything ourselves, and there's a lot of pride in doing things alone. And we kind of have this innate negative view towards networking that we've touched on for a variety of reasons. And as a result, most of us aren't good at it at all. And it's something we really don't work on, we don't address. He's got this great quote, where he says, "Connecting, sharing my knowledge and resources, empathy and compassion in a continual effort to provide value to others while coincidentally increasing my own." And I think it's just a great point about how to do this successfully. So why should you bother? There's Mark Granovetter is a social scientist, and in 1973 published this paper called The Strength of Weak Ties. So this is the research that proved that weak ties are more valuable than strong ties. So he basically asked a bunch of people who got their first jobs, who was the contact who helped get you that job? And 85% of the people who participated in this survey said that the contact that helped them get their job, they saw them occasionally or rarely. And basically the people you see all the time, you all share the same information. There's nothing new that's coming from them. It's the occasional contacts that you may see once a year at RSNA who have new information that might be able to help you. So in order to get this new insight and information, you need to have a strong network of these weak ties. And just as an aside, this is the most cited paper in the social sciences, 37,000 citations. And for those of you who struggle with research and rejections, this is a comment from the first review he got on this paper where it was rejected. And it said, "It should not be published. I respectfully submit the following among an endless series of reasons that immediately came to mind." So don't lose hope when you get those rejections, all right? So how does that look in reality? So here's kind of your formal hierarchy at the top. Now we have much more organizations with horizontal structures. So there are very few people above you that you can naturally work with. So what you need to figure out is who are the information brokers. So the same network depicted on the bottom shows who really has the power, right? And it turns out it's this Josh character in this in this situation. And you would think that based on, the organizational structure, power rises as you move to the top. But when you do end up in your jobs, you'll see that there are these power brokers, these information brokers that are important to be in touch with and important to know and recognize. And those are the ones that can really make things happen. This is another study. So this was at the National Health Services in the UK. They implemented 68 different clinical initiatives and looked at which ones were successful and which ones weren't. And basically, the people who were champions for projects who were part of the organization's informal network were able to successfully implement their changes, whereas the people who just had, hierarchical power really couldn't get it done. And very, very interestingly, so it was the people who could bridge disconnected groups and individuals who could successfully implement projects. The fence sitters were people who weren't sure if they're on board with your project, but having good relationships with them and being able to convert them was most helpful in being able to get your initiative implemented, because they had influence. People didn't just think that they're on board with whatever you do, and it's very fascinating. And then lastly, we're built to do this. So the human brain, so we've got a large neocortex which handles complex thought and reasoning, and there's a correlation between the size of the neocortex and the size of the community you need. So we're really built for this. So in summary, why do you need it? It's going to help you. It's going to help you get more job and business opportunities. Going to lead to broader and deeper knowledge because you're going to have access to information you wouldn't otherwise have. It's been shown to correlate with improved capacity to innovate, faster job advancement, but much more importantly, improving the quality of your work and increasing job satisfaction. And these have all been shown in studies. This is not just my opinion. So how do you build your network? So number one, I hope you're all on LinkedIn. I'm not going to go into what you should be doing on LinkedIn, but I think it's just very important to have a professional profile up there. These groups are finding out everything about you. So be in charge of the content you're putting up there. There's 128 million users in the US. So, it's out there, it's common, be in control of it. If I meet someone and I look and I'm trying to look them up and I can't find a LinkedIn profile giving me some basic information about them, I wonder what they're trying to hide. And then Twitter, I think, is an incredibly powerful tool. Really can help you make a name for yourself, brand yourself. You don't need to be super active on it, but as a resident, it's the easiest way to get yourself out there. And again, be careful what you put out, but you're in control of it. So then starting to build your network. So we've got a lot of subspecialty networks in radiology. So there's the American College of Radiology Resident and Fellow Section Virtual Journal Club, which you guys may get emails about. You can participate in that. There's ACR now has this tool Engage, which creates the community. So you're all, presumably members of the ACR if you wanted to use that tool. I'm a musculoskeletal radiologist, so we've got something called the OCAD listserv. So it's one case a day. And it's basically just MSK radiologists sending things out, having discussions. So, that's an easy thing you can do. If you want to step it up a notch, somebody actually has the Intergalactic Online MSK Conference, which is a weekly go-to-meeting platform. So if you wanted to, dial in and be present for that. And then I'm also interested in quality improvement. So there's this group called the Learning Community for Improvement in Radiology, and they do combined email and go-to-meeting platforms. So whatever your niche is going to be, there's probably networks out there that you can easily start getting involved with. So building your network. There's 3 types of networks that you want to think about. So number one is your operational network. So this is how do you get work done? So getting work done efficiently. And then where you're going to want to build this network. So it's probably going to be internal in your department. And probably the people are going to be prescribed. So depending on what you're doing. So the example would be you're on your MSK rotation and you need help with an MSK case. You're going to go to the MSK radiologist in your department. But you want to make sure you have that relationship and know who to go to and have them prepared to help you. Then you also want to think about your personal network. So the goal of this is to enhance your personal and professional development. So these contacts, you're probably going to want to be mostly external to your department. They need to know about what are your future interests, where are you going, how can they help you get there. Things that are important with this network, you want it to be broad. You really want to identify contacts who can help you and keep them close. And then your strategic network. So figuring out your future priorities. These people might be internal and external, depending on what you're trying to do in your organization. And leverage is the key with this group to being able to get value from it. So a couple tips. This is my thought is, if somebody asks you to do something or gives you an opportunity, never say no. As Michael Scott quoting Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But it's hard. You don't get a lot of opportunities starting out as a resident. So I think be careful about when you say no, because if you become the person who always says no, people will stop coming back to you. Show up early and often. I think that's a pretty easy one for you guys. Casual encounters are a great way to open up contact with someone and get things started. In the spirit of doing things for others in your network, offer favors with nothing in return. Don't if you come in right off the bat asking for something, people are going to want to shy away from you. Definitely prioritize who are the important contacts, who you need to make sure you see and spend time with, and use your full arsenal, whatever you have: email, phone calls, coffee. I think handwritten notes are incredibly powerful. It's annoying to do because we don't do it anymore, and it's hard. It actually takes a decent amount of time, but you can really make an impression on someone sending them a thank you card or a note. This was floating around Facebook when I was putting this together. 10 things that require zero talent. Just think about all these things when you approach an interaction with someone, and make it be a pleasant experience. And so I think the other thing you really need to do is change your mindset and think about the perspective with which you approach networking. So there's a couple articles out there that talk about focusing on learning and turning networking into a learning experience and shifting from prevention to promotion. So rather than thinking about it as something I have to do to survive, think about it as something that's gonna add value to you. That's gonna be a positive event. So, and the truth is, networking then becomes this opportunity for discovery and learning rather than a chore. So I mentioned the holiday party. Just think to yourself, like, how many of you got the email about your department holiday party, and you're like, oh crap, I gotta go to this on Sunday, Saturday night. I don't want to do that. Well, think about shifting it from a chore to, here's an opportunity for me to interact with a lot of my colleagues in a way that I don't get to, during the workday. Maybe I'll find out things about them. Maybe I'll learn something new. It's a new opportunity, and approaching it with that new mindset can really help you think about it differently. Brian Uzi talks about the shared activities principle. So, he basically says, do something you love. If you love running, join a running club, and then your networking in the running club isn't a chore. You're doing what you love. And so think about the things that you do right now that could be turned into those types of experiences. So once you establish your network, you want to maintain it. So you definitely need to continually reach out. It takes persistence and practice. And again, you have to think about what you can give. So many of you are very junior nowadays, at this stage in your career. So you may not have a lot to offer, but you can all offer gratitude, recognition, enhanced reputation. A thank you goes a really long way and means a lot to a lot of people. So think about the things you have and not what you don't have to offer. Just wanted to touch on mentorship, because whether you go into private practice or academics, you're going to need mentors to help guide you. And something we talk a lot about in Colorado with our junior faculty and residents is the fact that it's a two-way relationship. It's not one-sided. There's definite roles for both mentor and mentee. But if you're struggling with networking, and find a networking mentor. Find someone who can help you, teach you to do this. And there's been studies linking it to better career choices, faculty advancement, and again, overall well-being and job satisfaction. Wherever you work, that's something you definitely want, especially with a 50% burnout rate in radiology. So real briefly, we're going to touch on how to assess and improve your network. So very important to develop a mission, and it's something we really don't talk about in radiology. We all sort of get into a program, and the mission, the goal is to finish training, do your subspecialty training, and move on. But really think about what do you want? What makes you happy? What do you want in your career? And really think about what's your 1, 5, and 10-year plan. A couple of years ago at RSNA, somebody asked me that, and I jokingly said my 1-year plan is to figure out my 5-year plan, and my 5-year plan is to figure out my 10-year plan, because we don't think about these things. But really try and think about what do you want to achieve. And a real basic 3-step plan for doing that. So find your passion, find what really makes you happy, and then set a goal. And I thought this was a great quote. A goal is a dream with a deadline. So it doesn't have to be unrealistic. Don't make it overbearing, but where do you want to be in a certain amount of time? Put it to paper, make it specific and believable. And then once you know what your mission is, you can create your personal board of advisors and the people who are going to help you get there. But if you don't know where you want to go, it's going to be difficult to do that. So then network assessment. I don't know how many of you have seen the Jimmy Kimmel National Unfriend Day, but there's a real role for this. You need to think about who in your network is adding value and who's really not. So the self-similarity principle is something people talk about a lot. Is everyone in your network the same? Do you just have an echo chamber of people yesing you through everything? Because that's problematic. You're never going to be challenged. You're never going to really think objectively about what you're doing. So the number they throw out is if 65% of your network is similar to you, it's probably problematic. Do you have shared activities? Are you challenged? And is your network diverse but selective? So when you're actually thinking about the format of your network, so there's a cohesive network like we see here, where all your members are connected. And this is great. Think about like your residency program, right? Social cohesion fosters support and trust. It's easy to coordinate the group, but the problem is you have no outside influence. So on the other hand, you can have a bridging network similar to this, where members are not connected, but now you get all this new information from the outliers that nobody else has. You control the message that goes to everyone else, and you can tailor it. And if you think back to the beginning of the lecture, right, this looks exactly like William Dawes and Paul Revere, and the 2 different networks they had and the subsequent success. So I think it's important to do a networking PDSA every once in a while. So except instead of PDSA, we'll say analyze. So I really think about who's in your network and what do they add, and ask the question, does this relationship make me better off? And I guarantee everyone has the people in their lives that if they really stop and think about it, they can honestly say, boy, I should probably move on from this. And what are some of the benefits, like we see here, that somebody may give you? Then delayer your network, so limit the energy sapping relationships. I thought this was fascinating, but 90% of the anxiety in your life is caused by 5% of the people. So just something to think about. If you can get rid of that 5%, probably not a bad idea. Then diversify your network, so reinforce it, add energizers, and then make sure to capitalize and use them efficiently. And some people mention doing this every 6 months. I think that's probably a little much, but something you definitely want to do as you progress through the stages of your career. So just a couple things that you may be doing wrong in your network. So wrong structure. You can have if it's too formal and relies too much on hierarchy, you could be missing out on those power brokers, those information brokers lower down. You can be overloaded where you have too much going on and too occupied with networking and can't get anything done. The wrong relationships, like we talked about, and again, being in a biased network. And then wrong behavior. So someone who's superficial, knows a million people, very surface level, but doesn't have that deeper connection. Or I like this one, the chameleon, somebody who changes whatever they want based on where they are. And then people will see you as inauthentic. Your optimal network, you want high performers and people who give you a lot of satisfaction. That's what you should really be aiming for. And satisfaction can be mean different things. So just a little bit of advice for when you start out. The numbers that I came across when I was reading about this is you've got 30 to 60 days to form your impression when you start out. So really keep that number in mind. After that, no matter how long you stay somewhere, people are going to have made up their mind. So when you start, really think about, what do I need to do here to succeed? Is it Is it just reading a lot of cases? Is it, being the go-to person to communicate with the referring docs? Is it am I going to be the quality and safety person? Whatever it is. Figure out who has influence in the department, because oftentimes it may not be your section head, may not be the chair. There's going to be your other people. And really, really importantly, who gets around roadblocks, because this is a huge one. Give before you receive. So when you start out somewhere, don't start asking. Show people what you have to offer before you start asking. And then there was a really interesting paper that talked about how former employees, when they leave, can really help expand your network and actually make you better off after you leave. So just think about all the former co-residents, attendings, et cetera, that you used to work with. A few little resources. So Dale Carnegie has this book that's really great. Keith, the Never Eat Alone is a really good read. It's pretty quick. If you ever read Harvard Business Review, they every few months have a couple articles on this, and it's a really good read. Their website, they tweet a lot about this, and they have a podcast too, where I would say, every other month the topic probably is about networking. So in conclusion, just to highlight a few things, so I really like this quote by Keith Ferrazzi in Never Eat Alone. So provide value to others while coincidentally increasing my own. So think about that when you approach these approach networking. Remember the importance of your weak contacts, and really make sure you have that aspect of your network. When you're building your network, think about the different goals. So your operational, personal, and strategic. You're going to need all those different types of people. Think about the shared activities principle. So make it fun, do what you like, and it won't be a chore. Every once in a while, take a look at your network, see what you need, what you're missing, and remember to get rid of that or minimize that 5% that's causing you 90% of your anxiety. And just remember that you've got 30 to 60 days when you start out: fellowship, your job, etc. So really hit the ground running, but hit the ground running focusing on what you need to do to succeed. And lastly, on the road to, unlike this truck driver, there are no shortcuts on the road to success. Networking takes practice. It can become easier to do as you do it, but you just need to make sure to work on it and make it a priority. All right, thank you.